Today I'm breaking down certain eBay subcategories that can completely drain your time and money, but also subcategories that include placemats like the ones I just sold that can completely transform your reselling business. I'll be ranking these subcategories from level 1 to level 7, and by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly where your time is worth spending. And you'll love the bolos I have for you while we go through this. Now, if you discover that you are regularly sourcing items from level 5 to 7, I consider you to be operating on an expert level. Let's get into it.
Yay! Flippin' high gravy!
Level 1 items would be the items you typically list for under $10. And honestly, for most resellers, they can be a trap. I'm talking about objects like mass-produced collectibles, cherished teddies, Hallmark ornaments, the kind of stuff you see at all the sales. Now, before you come at me in the comments, I know there are exceptions because every collectible category does have a holy grail or two. With Hallmark ornaments, which I almost always pass on, there are at least 3 big flips that I know about, and you want to be aware of them. The 2020 Scarlett O'Hara ornament is a good one. The 2011 This Bird ornament is a good one. And of course, the 1980 Frosty Friends ornament. This one was actually the first release in Hallmark's longest running series of ornaments. Now, they easily sell for $100, but if you find it still in the box, look at what it sells for. Now, it's unlikely also that this particular Frosty ornament will ever lose popularity, but trends do shift in all of these collectible fields, so you want to stay current. One more exception to point out here: some resellers build their entire brand around a very specific collectible, like Hallmark ornaments or even music CDs, and it works because buyers will buy multiple items at once, or they'll turn into repeat customers for multiple sales through the years. And if you specialize as a reseller like this, you will develop an edge when you are outsourcing because you will know which ones are the holy grails. Whereas I would walk right past a valuable CD, you would know to pick it up. So just in case you have a store that is full of $7 and $10 items, don't be discouraged here because you are gaining valuable experience. What I'm challenging you on is that there is so much more for you to get to the higher levels of inventory. Before we move on to level 2, keep in mind that I do have decades of experience in reselling, but I'm still just one opinion. Everything I share comes from how I personally manage my time and my inventory budget. Level 2 is slightly more profitable than level 1, but it's a category that I've drastically cut down on sourcing, and that is clothes. And I used to buy quite a bit of clothing before a whole new world opened up to me with hard goods. Back when I was selling a lot of clothes, I just continued to get more and more frustrated because I would miss tiny little holes or other imperfections because there is a lot to inspect when you're sourcing clothing. I know other sellers still manage to sell clothing with imperfections. I have willingly bought clothing myself with imperfections, but that just isn't what I wanted to do. And the return situation. I know it's better on Poshmark, but clothing has one of the highest rates of return of any category on eBay. And then I considered what I was making on clothing once I started selling hard goods. And it's not uncommon to source a shirt for $8, you sell it on eBay for $20, you might net $5 after the shipping and all the fees. I still know resellers that absolutely crush it on Poshmark, and especially if you're willing to buy up, spend more on higher end clothing, you can make a lot of money. But for a lot of us, the cost to benefit ratio just doesn't hold up. When I shifted my focus to hard goods, my profits went way up and my headaches definitely went down. For me, there's no going back. And you'll see that I still occasionally do sell clothing, but it's definitely not my focus anymore. Level 3 has huge potential, but like clothing, it's not for everyone. And I'm talking about electronics here, but I want to be clear because there is serious money in electronics. I've made really serious money in electronics, but I'm going to explain to you why it's not for me. And huge respect to flippers who sell stereos and Wii consoles for hundreds of dollars that they find at yard sales, but I've moved on, and here's why. Storage is a problem. Testing is a problem for me. I've sold electronics for hundreds of dollars only to get a return later on because something wasn't working right. And the shipping is notoriously heavy, so it's going to be expensive. But if you're willing to put in the work on flipping electronics, it can be a gold mine. You just want to have your eyes wide open. Level 4 is where I start saying yes. These are what I call the no-brainer pickups. They're things I always grab if the price is right. I'm going to give you some examples of level 4. Items like products that people actually use, just like these that I just sold. It includes retro items that aren't made anymore, like these. And vintage collectibles still in their original packaging. Discontinued makeup and fragrance that are new and sealed, of course, vintage 35 millimeter film cameras or digital cameras. All these things move well, they price well, and they require minimal effort to list. Level 5. Now we're getting into the good stuff and some of my favorite things to sell. And level 5 to me is becoming familiar with the brands that reliably sell for a higher price point. And I'm going to give you some examples of these brands. These brands are so strong that even if an item doesn't sell on its own, you can bundle it and still move it. I'm going to highlight some of these brands that you absolutely need to know, starting with Christopher Radko, especially his ornaments. Also, Jonathan Adler and Mackenzie Childs. Vintage Japan, specifically Napco and Holt Howard, are top favorites. J. Strongwater, and I'll keep showing you some sold listings here. But memorize these brands, study them, and get to recognize them. Because here's the bigger lesson underneath all of it. The more you train your eye to recognize quality, find craftsmanship, the less you have to rely on knowing specific brand names. I can spot sterling silver from across the room. I don't need to see the Christopher Radko tag to know it's a Christopher Radko ornament. That's the eye you are building toward. Level 6 is where I think some of the most interesting resellers live. Level 6 is all the stuff you pick up that you know something is special about it before you even know what it is or what it's worth. And you really don't need to study something like the Neiman Marcus catalog if you develop instead your eye for quality and craftsmanship. Even color can be an amazing guide for you. If I put a bunch of random items on a table right in front of you right now, do you think you could pick out all the items that have the most value? I actually made a quiz like that, and I'll make more in the future, but I'll link that video below and feel free to test yourself to see how you do. Here are some examples from my own sourcing history, and all of these items caught my eye for some reason, whether it was their uniqueness or they were super well made. It's before I even knew in some cases what the item even was, but I definitely didn't know the actual value of the item before I picked it up. I found this book for $10 at a yard sale, and it just looked unusual. It looked special to me, and it sold for $190. Now, I don't have pictures of everything. I'm going to give you examples here, but I found an antique dental tool still in its original box. I sold that for almost $400. I sold a salad serving fork and spoon by Michael Aram, shaped like a man and a woman. That set sold for over $200. I found an old bracelet with 8 rare glass photo charms. I decided to sell those charms individually for $75 each. They sold quickly. And I sold a collar box similar to this that sold for $450. The paint was excellent. And I also sold an Enid Collins purse similar to this. I know it sold for several $100s, but I don't have an exact price on that. I also sold a batch of Victorian ribbon salesman sample cards. I sold the batch for $700. And I sold a Vaseline glass apern, am I saying that right, for almost $1,000. So what did all these sales have in common to make them a part of level 6? They were all things that caught my eye for either their color, their exquisite detail, their rarity, things that just stopped me in my tracks because they were so unusual. And those placemats that I showed you earlier, they were laminated, but they looked like they were finished with a laser. They were particularly perfectly edged. And then the color and design looked like 1970s or 80s Scandinavian to me. Anything Scandinavian you always want to take note of because that's a very popular design. It's always done very well for me. But then I saw that those placemats were actually signed on the back with the designer's name. That instinct, if you develop it, it will pay off over and over again. I've kept spreadsheets on all my eBay sales for the last 3 or 4 years, I would say, but that's where these examples came from. And let me know if any of you keep records on your past eBay sales. Level 7 is all about the ultimate digging. And level 7 is where the big flips are. They're the flips that are hiding in places that most people walk right by. Or they miss opportunities because they just don't ask. And if you watch my next live sourcing video, you will see me actually ask a woman at a yard sale, does she have any costume jewelry? And she brought it out from her house. She let me buy the whole box for only $25. I have regularly found 14 karat jewelry mixed in with jewelry lots I buy, not to mention a ton of sterling silver jewelry through the years, because whenever I see a good lot of jewelry, I won't go through it at the sale. I'll ask to buy the whole thing outright. I found these big Mackenzie Childs deer figurines still in their original boxes. There were either 6 or 8 of them tucked in the back of a closet at an estate sale because I'm always looking more thoroughly than the next person. And one of my most memorable finds was when I was at an estate sale that was completely picked over, but I happened to look up into the rafters of the basement and I noticed a very old scrapbook. I listed a few of these rare photos and I ended up selling the scrapbook privately to the guy who bought those first few photos. It was actually one of the biggest profits I've ever made as a reseller. Make a note to yourself, be a level 7 seller and always check the rafters of a basement. It's amazing the treasures you can find there. Another one of the biggest finds I've ever had was this quilted Chanel bag that was still in its original dust bag. It even had the authenticity card still inside. It retails for $11,300. And I found that at the bottom of a massive pile of clothing in a basement that everyone else was walking right by. Level 7 resellers are the ultimate diggers that look where nobody else wants to look, but they're also the ultimate networkers. And I just got a referral to a guy who's looking to sell all of his antiques and collectibles to downsize. I am meeting him later this week and we'll see if he has anything valuable, but that is the mindset. Always be looking, always be letting people know what you do as a reseller, and keep building relationships that lead to more opportunity. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you on the next video.